Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. I made a pie last night, and I made a wonderful shortbread chocolate crust to put that pie in. Made it with CarbQuick, which is very low carb. In fact, the whole crust is 19 grams carbs total. And I'm going to show you how I made this. In the meantime, if you will, give us a thumbs up if you like our videos, and subscribe. And if you click the little bell icon at the top right, you'll get a notice when I post new videos. Now let's get cooking. So this is CarbQuick. If you're not familiar with it, I use it quite often. This has 6 net grams of carbs per cup. And it acts a lot like flour, but it's not exactly like flour. You can't do all of the things. If you'll look at the back here, this says 2 net grams of carbs per third cup. And I think they figure a third cup is a serving on most things. So we're going to start with 2.5 cups, and that's 15 grams of carbs. And then I've got a half cup of lard and a half cup, 1 stick of butter. You may use all butter in this, 2 sticks if you prefer. Then I have 2 tablespoons full of unsweetened baking cocoa, and that's about 2 net grams of carbs per tablespoonful. And then I have 2 tablespoons full of Splenda. You can use a different sweetener if you want to, but I don't really know how to measure different sweeteners. I also have a cup of ice water. Now I'm adding a teaspoonful of salt. I'm going to put in the ingredient list a half a teaspoonful because that's really what I should have used. This is a bit saltier than I wanted. Now I'm making this in my food processor, just adding all these ingredients in. You probably could make it by hand or with a mixer. I haven't tried that. CarbQuick, there's my cocoa. CarbQuick acts a little bit different than flour. It doesn't work quite the same way, even though it's really very good. But I'm going to put all this in. You really can't easily sift the CarbQuick, so I'm just going to fluff it up here along with the other ingredients in the food processor. Most of the low-carb flours are difficult to sift, but they don't really need sifting. You can just fluff them up as you go. So now I'm going to add the shortening, and I had it in the freezer. I didn't mention that earlier. I measured it out, cut it up in little chunks, and put it in the freezer, which you would normally do with any pie crust. Freezing it helps with the flakiness, but there is no flakiness to this. This is more of a shortbread consistency. It's almost like cake when you're finished, the consistency of cake, and it is good. So I've got all of my shortening in there, and I'm just going to cut it in using the food processor blades. And you could probably do this with a pastry cutter, but I think it would take a long time. I just moved my ice water out of the way. Now I'm going to pulse this a few times just to get it started, and then I'm going to turn the processor on until all of that shortening, let me turn it so you can see it, is incorporated evenly throughout the flour mixture, the CarbQuick mixture. So a couple of pulses to get it started. And then I'll just let it run for a second. And then I'll show you the consistency we're going for. You want to get it, let me close up here just a little bit. So you can see just tiny little chunks of shortening throughout. And it's pretty evenly distributed, you can tell by looking. And that's what you're going for. You're just trying to get that shortening all through. Let me give you a little look here at the consistency. If you press it, it will stick together, but it's still very, very crumbly. And that's what we're going for. Now we'll add the water. And I have a cup of ice water, but I'm actually only going to use about 2/3 of the cup. And I'm going to drizzle it in slowly. Now what we're going for here is, see, there's my water, more of a batter than a dough. It's going to be very soft when we're done. And you just slowly drizzle in the water until it all pulls together. And you can see there that it's all coming together. So let me show you the consistency we're going for here. And you'll see it is thicker than, say, a cake batter, but much more moist than you would normally think of as a pie crust. It's very soft, very kind of sticky. Now I'm going to turn this out and kind of work it into a ball. I'll be right back. And I've put a little CarbQuick here on my glass board just to keep it from sticking so badly, because it's very sticky. And I'm not going to knead it or anything. I'm just going to work it into a ball and put it in a bowl and cover it. And then I'm going to let it rehydrate in the refrigerator for about an hour. And CarbQuick, so far, in every recipe I've used, needs that time for rehydration. You know, I probably should mention that I'm not a CarbQuick spokesperson. I don't get anything from them. I bought mine just like you would buy yours. I ordered it off of Amazon. And I don't generally use their recipes. The recipes on the package, to me, are not the best way to use it. But that's just me. I'm working this into a ball. And I'm going to flip it over here into this bowl and cover it with a little plastic wrap. I sprinkle just a tiny bit on the bottom to keep it from sticking, because it is very sticky. There you go. See, it's all on my bench scraper here. So we're just going to cover this up and put it in the fridge at least 30 minutes. I generally let it sit an hour. And that will rehydrate the CarbQuick more thoroughly, give you a better texture. Plus, it's easier to work with if you chill it. It's not quite as sticky if you chill it. So here we go. Let's cover it up well. In the fridge for an hour. And then I'll be back and make the crust. So here we go. I've cut off half of it and put it directly in a pie plate. I have tried to roll this out and you can't roll it out, or I can't roll it out. So I'm going to shape it right in the pan. And you know, I just realized my calculations of 19 grams per crust was wrong, because you get 2 crusts out of that recipe. So it's about 9.5 grams of carbs for this crust, which makes 7 servings. You can cut it into 8. That's a little bit too small. 6 is too big. I just worked out about 7. So I'm going to work this a little while, kind of slowly. You can see the texture. It's firmer than mashed potatoes, but not a whole lot firmer. And I'm doing quite a bit of time lapse here, because all I'm doing is pushing it and shaping it, trying to make it come all the way up. And you don't want it to be too thick, because when you're done with this, as I say, it kind of has the texture of cake, not pie crust. And you don't want it to be too thick on the bottom of the pie plate, because it won't get done all the way through. So I'm not going to make you watch me. I will just tell you that I keep my hands moist to keep it from sticking. And you can pretty much make the edge in any way you want to. It's difficult. It won't hold the shaping that I would normally do, the scalloping. So I'm just going to make it neat around the edges and try to make it even, except I got some of it just a little bit thicker than the other. But I'll get that evened out just a little bit. So I'm about done with it here. That's about as good as I can make it look. Because I had water on my hands, there's water around the edges, And I'm going to take a paper towel and neaten that up just a little bit, just to make it look good. I just don't want that bacon on my pan. That looks about right. And we're going to blind bake this, and I'm going to take a fork and sort of make little docks in it. It's not like a regular crust. It's not really solid, but I want to dock it a little bit just so it doesn't poof up in the middle. And I have a piece of parchment paper here that I've cut roughly into a circle. Just kind of free-handed it, fold it into quarters, and then round off the edges. And I'm just going to put this down in here a little bit. Now, when you blind bake a pie crust, you have to put some weights in it. And I haven't made a pie crust in a long time. I didn't blind bake one in a long time, and I usually keep a bag of beans. But I was cleaning out my pantry, and I threw away my bag of beans, so I'm going to open a new bag. And I just use them over and over and over. If you bake a lot of pies, you might want to invest in little ceramic weights. But a pound of beans works just fine. 1 pound works for one pie crust, a 9-inch pie crust. And that just gives it a little weight to keep it from puffing in the middle. And we're going to bake this. My oven's heated to 350. And I'll bake it for 30 minutes. I'm going to loosen this up just a little bit because it's kind of sticky. And when we're done, we'll have a shell that you can use almost any filling in. I haven't tried this, by the way, without pre-baking it, without the blind bake. But this works really well for any kind of a cream pie. And I'll show you several over the next few weeks, but this video is just the pie shell. So after 30 minutes in the oven, I'll show you the finished product. I'm going to carefully pull this back and take the beans out. You can see that it puffed up. As I said, you know, it's almost the consistency of cake. And you can make this without the chocolate, of course. I added the cocoa because this is going to be a double chocolate mousse pie. And I'll have a separate video on the pie filling. But you could also make a lemon curd pie, which I'll show you in a couple of weeks. And you wouldn't want the chocolate in that. So there you go. There is your sort of all-purpose, low-carb pie shell. 9.5 grams of carbs for the whole pie crust. And we're going to make 7 servings out of this. You could do 8. You could do 6. I'm going to do 7. So you can figure that under 2 grams of carbs per serving. I hope you try this with your favorite keto pie filling. I hope you like it. And I hope to see you again tomorrow.